Thank you, Mr. Mayor,
you as well
for joining us at a busy moment,
Yes.
the eve of your trip. But as this is a business event, I wanted to start with something that when you got into office that you were thinking about a lot, which was the whole return to office story, the story of real estate in Manhattan. And I was just looking back at your quote, which I feel very strongly about too, which is you can't stay home in your pajamas all day. I wonder, it seems like your views on that have actually, not on pajamas, but on return to office, have changed a little over your term. I'm curious how you see it now.
No, well, first of all, we should always evolve. And anyone who is stagnant in their thoughts and in their behaviors will never be able to evolve as much as possible. And we have to meet people where they are and take them where they ought to be. It is imperative for us to cross-pollinate ideas, energy, live in home. Loneliness is one of the major social determinants of health. People need to get back out. And I don't know how you're going to, if you're single, you're not going to meet your spouse standing home all the time. You need to go out and look at our restaurants, go to our theater, entertain with other people. And so what we did a modified work and gave individuals the options of a minimum of 3 days a week, and also looking at certain jobs that you can work from home, because not everyone can. My nurses, my doctors, my transit operators, when you look at the 300-something thousand city employees, some of them have to come in. So how do you compensate for them that must come in? And we have to find the sweet spot that we can continue the service of the city and at the same time have people in the work environment the way we want them to be.
Do you still think that Midtown Manhattan can fully come back as the business center it was before the pandemic, or do you see it increasingly as a kind of mixed-use residential area?
Great question. We were never at 100%. Many people were gauging, should we be at 100%? We weren't. We were always around 80% occupancy of our office spaces. We're creeping up. We're a long way from the days of 30%. We're in the area around 55%. We're going to have to redefine what our central business district must look like all over the globe. When I speak to my mayors across the globe, they're saying the same thing. We need to use, we have about 138 million square feet of office space. We need to look about some of that being converted into housing. We are in the need of affordable housing. We're not growing our housing stock as fast as we should. But we should also look at how do we change that office environment. It has to be an experience. It can't be the days of sitting inside a cubicle and expecting someone to be, inside four walls of a cubicle all day. That is not the reality. That is not what our young, business-minded people want, and we have to become an attractive.
So what do they want?
A combination. Number one, for whatever reason, tequila does well in office space.
Tequila, all right.
I mean, you have everything from ice cream to ping pong tables. It's just unbelievable what you see in some of the modern office spaces now.
All right. I was asking your administration just for some of the stats on the economy. I think one of the things kind of striking, New York City economy on the numbers, looking pretty good, I think, better than people would expect. One of the numbers that struck me was the net outflow of New Yorkers to Miami, a story we all wrote a lot a couple years ago. It turned out to be 1,800 people. And I'm curious what you make of that specifically. Like, what happened with the whole Miami thing?
A combination of things. Number one, Miami was extremely lenient around COVID. New York City, we were ground zero for the COVID pandemic, and Miami was not. And we were dealing with, when I came into office January 1st, 2022, we were trending in crime. No one wanted to be on our subway system. We were dealing with some real crime issues. People didn't want to be locked indoors. And they decided that Miami, Connecticut, a lot of the spaces in our regions, people changed. But you could only really absorb so much of sunshine, all day long. It gets hot. It gets hot. And folks realized that, hey, New York is number one. Unger was here. When I spoke with prime ministers, presidents, mayors, they debated about number 2 and 3. No one debates about number 1. This is the greatest city on the globe, and you're going to get homesick. And although we lost the number, we have 15,000 more finance jobs than we did pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
So we're still growing.
So it's nice to hear you say it's the greatest city on earth, because I think one of the criticisms of your mayoralty is that I think there's a balance between, there are moments when you're trying to ring the alarm. You said it's the worst crime you've ever seen. You're worried that migration is going to destroy the city. And there's a traditional role of the mayor as a booster, saying this is the greatest city on earth. CEOs ought to come here. Businesses ought to come here. And I'm curious, how you think about that balance. If you think you've let it get out of balance, or if this has all been deliberate.
Well, okay, first, there's no administration that is not going to have criticism. That's the role of a mayor. I mean, someone stopped me the other day. They're getting divorced. I hate you, Eric. What I got to do with your divorce, man? So the reality is, the mayors are closest to the problem. You're going to find a reason to dislike the mayor. Yeah. But number one, I did not say this is the worst crime I've ever seen. We were pointing out the level of violence that we witnessed, where there was a total disregard. During my days of policing, someone would do a shooting because they were doing a robbery. Someone would do an assault because they were in a fight with someone. When you had the case of a woman being pushed on a train like Michelle Go, when you saw those with severe mental health illnesses carrying out these acts of violence, when you saw young people just shooting innocent people, that is what I was talking about. But the business you're in is not what I say, is how y'all want to interpret it. I was telling exactly what I observed. And I was honest with New Yorkers. Listen, New Yorkers need to understand what we're up against. This migrant asylum issue can destroy this city. And I'm not going to be dishonest to New Yorkers. We've been able to hold down this crisis. We have a real crisis.
And you're heading tomorrow, I guess. Where do you fly to first?
I'm going to Mexico. Then I'm going to go to Ecuador, and then I'm going to go to Colombia. We receive 116,000, over 60,000 in our care. We're getting 10,000 a month, 10,000 a month. Our budget is $106 billion. $76 billion of that we can't touch.
Yep.
We have a $30 billion that we could do different things with. $12 billion out of that $30 billion is going to go to paying for the existing migrant asylum seeker course. That money has to come from somewhere.
Do you worry that by calling attention to the crisis, by going to South America, that you're going to alienate, that you have alienated, that you're going to alienate the Biden administration, which is likely ultimately where that money's got to come from?
Well, first of all, right now it's coming out of the pockets of New York City taxpayers. We need to understand that. We received a little over $100 million from the federal government. The rest is coming from New York City taxpayers. And that means giving money to struggling, low-income New Yorkers. All those programs we put in place to finally allow New Yorkers to move out of systemic poverty are now being challenged. And so I think the president has done a great job. We've stood side by side around crime. We stood side by side around environmental issues. But on these issues, I believe the White House is wrong. We cannot allow cities to go through this and carry the weight of a national process. And I'm elected to represent the people of the city of New York. This is the city that I policed in, I protected, and I'm not going to betray them by merely being quiet on the issue of this magnitude.
Have you talked to the White House about this Latin America trip?
Yes, we reached out and spoke to our congressional delegation, and we notified the White House, the State Department as well. I have to go on the ground. We did this last year when I went to El Paso to see what was happening at the border, and it allowed me to establish real relationships. I need to go into those countries who are given a false hope of coming to New York, of stating that you're going to be in a 5-star hotel, that you're going to be employed right away. That's not the reality. And I want to go on their radio, their TV, and tell them this is the reality of when you come to New York City. So the plan that I must put in place...
Did you ever imagine that's where you'd be, going around the world telling people not to come to New York?
No, the goal is not to come to New York, is to be honest what's in New York. This is a city of immigrants, all of us. No matter who we are, you could trace your background to your ancestors coming here. But here's the big difference. You had the right to work. Imagine where any of us would have been if the early Irish, Italians, Chinese, Africans, if you would have come to this city and your parents were told for 6 months to maybe 2 years, you cannot work. That is so anti-American.
Just got a couple minutes left, and one of the great New York industries, obviously the media. I was talking to obviously, to my friends in the audience. I'm talking to somebody who thinks about running for mayor sometimes, was one of the people maybe they thought about running against you, and they said, you know what, I would never run for mayor because dealing with the media would be such a nightmare. And I'm curious, you're someone who was great at, when I covered you back in Brooklyn years and years ago, great at getting attention to causes you cared about when it was hard to get attention.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're in a situation where it is incredibly easy to get attention. And I'm curious, I don't know, how are we doing?
Well,
What do you think?
am I doing a rating from A to
Yes.
F?
Yes.
You're clearly doing a G. Let me tell you what has happened. And my son was the one that really resonated with me. He says, Dad, you have people who own supermarkets, restaurants, who are just far left in their philosophy, that believe people who are dangerous on the street for mental health issues, they should be able to do that. People should not go to jail for carrying guns. We should be anti-business, anti-development. If you have far left people that are in those positions, why do you not think some of them are reporters? Why don't you think there's some people that cover you that no matter what you do, they're going to find a reason to criticize you? And I said, that's why I paid all that money for you to go to American University. You're right.
So thank God for the New York Post?
Well, no, thank God for journalists that take their crafts seriously and not take their personal experiences and cover the story. There used to be this difference between a columnist and a reporter. The columnist did their opinions. The reporter reported the facts the way they are. And I think some, not all, there's some great reporters out there, but I think that there's a different craft of reporters. They think academic research is going on Twitter and seeing what's on Twitter. No, it's not the tweet, it's the street.
That doesn't count?
No, it does not.
A final question for you. I was just looking back at the clips from the beginning of your mayoralty, and you took a paycheck or two in crypto.
Yes.
Are you still holding it?
Yes, I do.
Hodling?
Yes, I believe, I think blockchain, crypto, all these new ways of paying for goods and services is going to shift. Listen, remember at one time we were using stones and trinkets and other items to pay for things. Money is going to evolve, and we could be afraid of it or not. Evolution is not going to stand still just because of our fear. I know I inherited a city, January 1st, 2022. Crime was trending in the wrong direction. No one wanted to be on the subway system. We were afraid it was going to have our bond ratings. We were in just a state of total chaos. Where are we now? AA bond rating by Fitch, AA bond rating to the Hudson Yards, 4 million people peaking out on our subway system, decreasing our 5 out of the 7 major crime categories. Crime overall is going down. 12,000 illegal guns off our streets. 56 million tourists, 65 million this year. This place is not coming back. This place is back.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you so much.